spoiler alert, in bold italics, asterisks. We're going to talk about the end of the movie Conclave. So if that, offends you, that we'll talk about the end, I've warned you. It's also going to deal with a more mature sex-related topic. So parents, you can make a decision accordingly.
Right.
Okay, so an actual conclave is happening tomorrow in Rome. So we're going to circle back to the movie Conclave, which we talked about in detail last week with the sin of certainty was the topic from the film. And somebody asked us to talk about the end because they didn't like the end. And I've seen a lot of Christian commentary about not liking the end.
Yeah, some of it misguided.
Yeah.
Like they totally, were you even watching the movie?
Missed the point a little bit.
And because what happens a lot in Christian circles is people will go like, I saw this post by somebody who said I shouldn't watch it, so I didn't, and you shouldn't either because it's offensive. And you're like, wait, but you didn't see it.
I saw that discourse literally as soon as the movie came out by people who had never seen the movie, just warning other people not to see it.
And the warning was that at the end, the guy who selected as Pope, Cardinal Benítez, people were saying that he's transgender. And that's absolutely incorrect.
Yes, not right at all.
I was expecting there to be a transgender ending to the movie based on all the commentary I saw. And that is absolutely not what happened. It doesn't mean that there isn't talk of something related's the wrong word.
I mean,
unusual.
People lump them together, even though they're not related.
So I'm going to read for you some of the transcript, but at the end of the day, Cardinal Benítez is discovered at the very end of the film, I'm talking the last paragraph of the film, to be what's called intersex. Now, that word is not used. Here's how he described it at the end of the film. He said that some secret procedure he was going to have was called a laparoscopic hysterectomy. And it makes everybody gasp in the room. What?
Yeah.
Because he's a guy. So he says this, you have to understand when I was a child, there was no way of knowing my situation was more complicated. And life in the seminary is, as you know, a very modest one. The truth is, there simply was no reason to think I was physically different from the other young men. Then, in my late 30s, I had surgery to remove my appendix. And that's when the doctors discovered that I had a uterus and ovaries. Some would say my chromosomes would define me as being a woman, and yet I'm also as you see me. It was a very dark time for me. And then he goes on to essentially grapple with the idea that in his 30s, he discovered he has a uterus, and he didn't know.
Yeah.
And that is a textbook definition of intersex. So if you're not familiar with what intersex is, it's a condition in which individuals have physical sex characteristics that do not fit into a traditional category of male or female. And there's variations of it. People could have both XX and XY chromosomes. Some people can have both male and female parts. Some people could have ambiguous parts. Some people could, like in his case, my understanding would be that he was male on the outside.
Right.
And carried also female parts on the inside. Now, it's a little weird. It's a little startling.
It's a shocking revelation.
Very shocking. So I want to process this a little bit together. So let's take a few steps back. Now, it's okay that somebody would go, I don't like that. We didn't need to do that. Like maybe you're Roman Catholic and you're like, don't do that. That messes with my faith. Maybe you're just a Christian and you're like, why do we have to put sex in everything? I get it. You're okay with that. It's fine to feel that way. But here's the existential question. Must we agree with everything in a book, TV show, or movie to find it valuable?
No.
Ron says no.
I don't think so.
No.
I think most Christians would agree with that. Like, for example, it happens all the time. Ravi Zacharias falls from grace, ends up being somewhat of a monster, if not a giant monster behind the scenes. So do we throw away all his teaching?
No, because it was still good teaching.
James MacDonald. My family grew up and was formed by a lot of his teaching. And he fell from grace for being a really, really mean person. So do we ignore his teaching completely? I don't. And then
Say that people didn't become saved through his teaching?
Right.
I don't think so.
What about the Cosby Show? That's one of the best mind benders. I grew up watching the Cosby Show. A lot of people did. So what? Now I have to pretend like I didn't? Or can I say in the same breath Bill Cosby was a monster behind the scenes, but created a great show.
True.
So just because it has to do with sex in society, and that's a very, trendy thing, doesn't mean that you have to hate it. I feel like there's almost a rule now.
I mean, we had two really rich discussions last week in which we got a lot of calls, talked to a lot of great people who are, wrestling with some things and asking some really great questions. That conversation was spurred by a 2-minute clip from the movie. So even if there are aspects that we don't agree with, and I think it's fine that you're troubled or disturbed by certain elements of the film, there's still some really great richness that can come out of it.
And, if you're advocating for this idea of extremes where you must throw out every book, TV show, and movie that you disagree with one part of, you got to get rid of every Harvey Weinstein film ever made, which is, I don't know, half of the movies in like the 90s and the early 2000s.
I mean, some people have some lifetime favorite movie and there's like sex in it outside of marriage. Still your favorite movie, though.
Right.
You still tell everybody to watch it.
Now, we're not saying we like that they did that at the end. We're not saying we think it's a good idea. We're just saying that it's possible to find a movie valuable even if you don't like how it ends or portions of it. That's a higher level concept.
And it introduces some very good topics to discuss.
Look at us now. We're talking about it again.
I mean, just because we don't like it and it makes us uncomfortable, maybe you didn't like that they spun the ending some way. Some people do have this, and they don't talk about it.
It's about
some
1
people
in
do
2,000
live like this.
people.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
I did some digging, and there's actually there's not super reliable data out there because people are so embarrassed
Exactly.
that they don't self-report.
So it's not like it's not something like made up. It's not like they did something so scandalous and outrageous and made up. It's something like real and true that does happen to people. Yeah, maybe you didn't like how they spun the ending, but it's not something that they like just made up to be scandalous.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the same number, Ron. 1 in 2,000 births is one number I've seen. I've seen less than 1% of the population. Up to 1.7% seems to be in medical circles the percent of the population of the world that's intersex. It's not a lot of people, but it's still people that exist. It's not it's not a choice. This is where a lot of society gets uncomfortable because we as believers, of course, believe there's two genders, male and female. We believe that marriage is between one man and one woman for life. And we believe that homosexuality is not appropriate. It's called a sin in Scripture, among other things like lying and stealing. And so with that said, like the choice of being transgender, for example, is something that God would not approve of. But he doesn't approve or disapprove of a genetic malformation. Isn't that what you're saying, Lauren?
Right. Right.
Like being intersex is not something someone chooses. It's something that happens.
Yes.
And that actually is part of the dialogue of the story.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're not, at the end, it's not like he's trying to distort the image of God that God created him in. That is how he was made.
And he is a little bit embarrassed, you can tell, and he has clearly wrestled with this for a majority of his life.
Yeah, he said it was a very dark time for me, and he said, I felt as if my entire life as a priest had been lived in a state of sin. And he went to resign. Like, this is not cheering for the intersex community. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, if you're looking at it critically, he was actually very troubled by it when he discovered it was the case. Okay, so with that in mind, there's still some high-level things to discuss with this. And then also, I think, some artistic things to discuss with this. We have Ken from Akron on the line, who's a physician. Dr. Ken. Welcome to the show, Ken. Are you there, Ken?
Are you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now,
Yeah,
Ken.
Okay. Yep.
So talk to
I
us.
just wanted to bring a little bit of clarity as I was listening this morning. You know, when you look at genetics, there is somatic genes, which is 46, and that controls basically, how we're produced, our organs, just everything about us. And we know when there's a defect like trisomy 21, that would be Down syndrome. For reproductive genes, there's two classic conditions, which I think you're describing with intersex. It's Turner syndrome and Klinefelter's, where a male has a XXY instead of just an XY gene, and a female has basically has a X and a defective X. And so there can be an intermingling of the different sex organs between the two, but it's not that common. And I think that what happens is a lot of times today's movement, the transgender movement, use this to base their argument. And that's not true. It's been around forever. It's not God's confusion. Confusion comes from Satan. Why do we have genetic defects? We'll have to ask God. We know it's a broken world.
Yeah.
But these have been around forever, but they've gotten a lot of popularity in the last 5 years with the whole transgender movement.
Yeah, that's super helpful. You used all the chromosome words I don't know, which I'm so glad you called for that. But if I'm understanding this correctly, our characterization is transgenderism as a choice and someone being intersex as a biological phenomena they did not choose. That's accurate, correct?
Exactly. And there's a book called Irreversible Damage that was written by, I think, the author Schreier, and she talks about the social movement of transgenderism. And I think it's a very, very good book that really explains truly, the truth is from God. The confusion is from Satan. And I think today with social media, we see so much confusion when it comes to this whole transgender movement, which is really a social phenomenon, not a biological choice.
Yeah, which is why I was so intrigued by the way the ending was revealed in the movie Conclave. Now, tell me what you think as a physician of this concept. The guy claims that he was, until age 30, believed he was male, and upon having surgery, he was told he had a uterus, and so he was all like, it freaked him out. Is that
right?
It's not common, obviously, but is it possible?
Yes, it is possible, and particularly with Klinefelter syndrome, where a person, basically has the X, so they have a Y chromosome, so they're producing the information to produce, testosterone, and they have testes, but they also have the female, which are more, for him, was probably just very silent. They found it just by happenstance, and I'm sure it was quite a shock. But again, this is very well described. It's been, in the literature for probably 100 years, and it's nothing that's new under the sun. It's getting a lot of popularity because it's used as an argument by the transgender culture. And it's not true. This is not, God didn't make us because we made multiple genders. He made man and he made woman, and there's a genetic defect in the reproductive genes, just as there is with trisomy 21 with Down syndrome. And we still love them both. They still can come to know Christ, but it really comes down to, Brian, is a pride thing.
Yeah. So do you have a take on the ending of the film? I mean, does it offend you that this was the end? Oh, did we lose you? We lost him. Oh, I wanted to know the end.
What a sad noise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aw.
So he said, with all the fancy words, our description was accurate. That it was not transgenderism at the end of the film.
And although rare, this is something that could, in theory, happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a genetic defect just like Down syndrome. So with that in mind, a couple of other things I wanted to touch on the end of Conclave here. On a higher level, people are thrown off by twists and endings all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because great storytelling, I would say, requires some sort of twist at some point, if not multiple twists.
It's not a story if things
twists.
just follow a linear line and nothing happens to the character.
Right. Yeah, like if there was a movie about my day
life.
yesterday.
Yeah, right.
It would be,
Quite boring, I'm sure.
Right.
nobody would see it because there's no twist. A twist is required. And in fact, a twist at the very end is a specific way to tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's shocking.
It is.
And now here's the other part of this, that if you really pay attention to how this story was told in Conclave, that twist can make some sense. If you get your head out of the idea of Hollywood's trying to change my thinking about sexuality, it could actually simply be a callback to a theme in the film. Here's what I mean. We talked last week about the sin of certainty. So the guy, one of the cardinals in there, encourages them to be not so overconfident about all their ideas that it causes division. They need unity, okay? The last line of the film actually calls back to this. He says, I am what God made me, and perhaps it is my difference that will make me more useful. I think again of your sermon. I know what it is to exist between the world's certainties. The last line, I know what it is to exist between the world's certainties. He is a personification of what it means
to be uncertain.
Uncertain. So do you see how it's not some random turn, oh, let's throw sexuality into the film. It could be interpreted as a legitimate twist tied to a theme in the film.
And it's making Brother Lawrence also confront his sins of certainty. He's the one that's been preaching on it the whole movie. He's faced with something right in front of him that's making him confront everything he thought he knew and get comfortable with something that's very gray. Because he, for all intents and purposes, is a man, but happens to have a genetic condition that also makes him not a man.
Yeah, and if you pay close attention to the end as well, it's not resolved.
No. It's
Cardinal Lawrence is actually clearly disturbed.
Yeah, he doesn't know what to do, but there's really nothing that can be done. There's no, as far as we know, nothing in place to reverse the decision once a pope has been made.
And part of the certainty is that everybody voted for this guy to be pope because everybody else had some stuff in their lives that was coming to light throughout the movie.
Some of them were really bad people.
Yes.
That were also quite popular, unfortunately.
Right.
And he was chosen for his character.
And so by the end, you're like, oh, they're certain that this guy's supposed to be pope. Oh, he has stuff too.
Because, as the theme would indicate, everybody has something.
Yes.
It's actually calling to the idea that, and that I don't like the way this is going to sound, but bear with me. We're all sinners. Now, a genetic deformity is not a sin, but essentially the concept being there's no perfect person.
Well, all of
our
bodies are deformed by sin.
Yeah.
We all live in fallen bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And I would argue a genetic disorder is a part of that.
Yeah.
Because we don't have our perfect bodies yet. Whether that's a genetic disorder, allergies, something else, it's all because we don't have perfect resurrected bodies yet.
Allergies. That's pretty apropos.
I'm just saying, I don't want people to think I'm saying, oh, if someone has genetic disorders, it's because they have a sinful body. No.
Correct.
So do I.
Correct.
So do my sons who don't have genetic disorders, but they do have allergies, which is their body's not functioning properly.
And in the film, they were looking for like the perfect pope, right? And
Right.
So we want the perfect pastor, the perfect mom, the perfect dad, and you're just not going to get it.
No.
Because we're fallen. Now, Ron and I have been on the air together for almost 10 years, and we've talked about almost everything under the sun. We've never talked about a Christian view of intersex.
You're right.
I can confidently tell you've never talked about that. So what would be, since this film brings up the idea of being intersex, it's a genetic deformity that of the sex organs, okay? What is a Christian view of the biological reality of being intersex?
I don't know that you need to have one. I mean, what's our view on people with Down syndrome?
Right.
I mean, another reason I think that this specific issue was brought to light in the movie is because a lot of Christians do tend to lump intersex people with transgender people, and they're nowhere near the same thing.
Nowhere near, yeah. Not even the same planet. Yeah, I like that, Daria, because it's like, what's the Christian view on people with Down syndrome? They are made in God's image.
Do I need to have a theological interpretation of the fact Lauren's sons have allergies?
No, you do not, because they're made in God's image.
I really don't think I need to have an opinion or thoughts on it. This is an actual genetic condition that happens because we don't really know why, but it just happens.
And this is why I get so consistently frustrated by Christians forming their view and opinion as a reaction to what the world is doing. If you do that in the case of sexuality, anytime someone brings up sex in a non-traditional form, you're going to hate it. And you're not even going to think about it. But what we have to do is we have to view everything through the light of Scripture. Mm-hmm. And genetically speaking, somebody who's intersex is no different than someone with any other genetic deformity. That's a consequence of a fallen world.
And I'll be honest, the first time I saw the movie, the way you find out is it says there, I was scheduled to have a hysterectomy or something like that. And my dad and I both groaned because we thought we knew where this was going.
Right.
I was wrong. I did not know where this was going. I thought that this was a transgender person who was born a woman and decided to become a man to go into, the clergy. Because in today's world, that's a storyline that could well and truly happen. But I was wrong. I kept listening and realized, this is an entirely different set of circumstances than I thought they were setting me up for.
That's the key. You kept listening. Because what people typically do is you hear something that makes you uncomfortable, and then you stop listening, and you miss
start yelling.
everything. Yeah, you start yelling or texting or whatever. And that, if you listen carefully in this, and again, I think the word choice of starting with the word hysterectomy was designed to startle people.
Correct.
Yeah.
But the filmmakers were hoping that you would actually listen. And this is where I have another larger point is precision matters. We look foolish as a body of believers if we mischaracterize the ending. If we walk around saying the ending is about transgenderism, we look stupid because it's not true. It's not what it's about. We look ignorant. It looks like we can't listen. And I don't think that's something we want. Now, we've never said now, keep in mind as we wrap this up, you must like it. You must agree that it's a good decision in storytelling. No, I don't know.
It's okay that it doesn't sit well with you.
There's a lot of endings I don't like.
But I think it's an interesting thought experiment. It makes you think about how you as Christians treat people that are different than you.
Yeah, I like that idea, that concept of a thought experiment. It is a good one. But if you go, listen, I'm tired of the world talking about sex stuff all the time. I don't want to see that. Okay. Hope that helps. Mm-hmm. Hey there. Thanks for joining us. Like you, we're looking for a different kind of conversation. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a video.